All right, so today we're going to be talking about one of the hardest times of our marriage. Yes, the hardest time of our marriage was when I committed adultery against my wife. And it was definitely difficult for the both of us. And
Mhm.
I think it's
Well,
important.
wait, let me stop you because as a viewer, right,
Yeah,
when you say it was hard for both of us,
yeah.
people who are the victim of an affair don't
Yeah, they're
understand.
probably thinking, like, you had the easy part. Whoever
Yeah,
did it.
right.
But
But we're going to break down why he's saying what he's saying as far as it being difficult for both of us because it
true,
was. It
true.
was.
Absolutely. Because, of course, with anything, there's consequences for your actions. So
Mm-hmm.
we went through, actually, yeah, I put us through a lot of consequences after the decision I made, from our house being lost. Just complete my job loss. I just saw a huge, just a massive repercussion from everything that I did. Everything just spiraled out of control after that.
But I want to say something here because it's like, well, why would you almost lose your house? Why would you go through financial turmoil because of infidelity? But and I'm a firm believer in this. When you are not operating, how can I call it, in a very positive frequency, let's say that
Or even mindset as well.
mindset, and you start operating from this low place, you generally will attract lower things kind of coming into your
Yep.
life. And the consequences are not really good when you're at that place.
So I actually like the fact that you said that, because I was definitely in a very dark, depressed, place. I was. So a lot of things that were going well went totally south, along with my attitude, because there's a lot of guilt involved, of course, and you begin to just think negative of yourself, and it's just you just keep going downhill. There's no looking up. So I like to say this, that it was a difficult, I would say, difficult to achieve the forgiveness for myself.
Yeah.
It's very hard, because I felt that, yes, I was wrong, and actually felt that God would never forgive me. I literally had those thoughts, like, I hurt this woman. She's so beautiful. Why would I do this? And I regret this decision. Can God forgive me? The hope was gone, because I watched the pain she went through. I watched the things falling apart. So again, it was that difficult moment. But how did I get there? Is a question. It really is. We may want to ask that question, as to how did I get to the place to forgive myself? And to be honest, it was a change of identity. The way I self-identified, the way I looked at myself, excuse me. I often looked at myself at one time as great guy, Chad, in church, loving God, serving God. Once I made this mistake, I began to believe, oh man, I'm the worst. I'm an adulterer. I did the worst thing. There's no way I'll get forgiveness. I have really ruined everything. And that stuck with me for almost a year following the incident. And
I would say actually even a
more than
little
a
longer
little
than
longer,
that
yeah.
because it would come in waves.
Yeah.
And now let me just say this, just to give you guys some backdrop to when this occurred. We are 31 years married now. We'll be 32 years married May 7th of 2026. We were how many years married at the time? Was it 12?
12? Yeah. Yeah.
So this was not recent.
Right.
This was not recent at all.
Right.
Actually, no, I was pregnant with Christina, and she will be 21 this year. So this was 20 years ago.
20 years ago, yeah.
20 years ago.
Right.
And that's right. I was pregnant with our third child.
Yep, 20 years ago.
When we went through this. Yep. It was terrible time. And didn't make any sense to me. And just to know some history, a little bit about both of us, we were both raised in church and living a kind of a promiscuous life, going out, clubbing, all of those things. That's not something we did.
No.
We was in church all the time and fell in love with one another. We got married. So, sleeping around, having other partners, whatever,
didn't
was
do any
just
of
not
that.
something that we experienced.
We were literally first.
For the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
For the most part. But, and the reason he said for the most part is because I was sexually assaulted years before then. So that was my first, was that, rape or that assault.
Yeah.
And so outside of that, we were each other's first.
Yeah.
And so there was just a lot of pain that this situation caused, because that was not new for us to deal with any of that. And so, and to make matters worse, it was with someone we both knew and had a relationship with. Obviously, that relationship was over and done with after that, but and he didn't even confess. I ended up finding out. So the reason I say all of that is to give you guys a little bit of history. And it is so easy to, what I did, I was so angry at him, I was angry at her, but I was equally angry with myself. And I blamed me. What could I have done better? What could I have done to prevent this from happening? And I went to my looks. I looked at myself and felt like, oh, if I looked better, if I was thinner, what could I have done? Was I not a good wife? I started inwardly just kind of looking at myself and blaming myself for those things. So both of us were just really having trouble during that time, forgiving ourselves, you know what I'm saying? And I know I was the victim in the situation, and I take no ownership in your behavior. And that's the one thing we've told couples, is that I have a role to play as a wife, as a mother, as a friend to my husband, but I'm responsible for my own actions, and he's responsible for his own actions. So even though I was blaming myself, wondering what I could have done better, and I know this sounds like it's all over the place, but I still felt like you made that decision, not me.
Right.
Now, I was self-analyzing, what could I have done better as a wife and whatever, but I take no responsibility in the act you committed.
I'm glad you made that point, because loving yourself is important. And kind of the theme we were trying to make was how to deal with forgiveness, how to, one, forgive yourself, and to forgive a person who's done something wrong to you. So loving yourself is the core to that. To getting through that.
Right.
So I think really just say, okay, how do you forgive somebody who's hurt you? First, love yourself. So hey, I know I've done nothing wrong. I love me. I am, and I have loved myself enough to be forgiving towards someone else. That's the part that a lot of people are going to say, I love me, so I'm going to hold that against them.
I think it's wonderful for people that have that type of self-love to, you know what I mean, just persevere through a situation or have resilience through something, because it's like, no, I love me too much to allow this in my space, because I believe that forgiveness comes with boundaries.
But wait, say that again, because what are you allowing you're not allowing into your space?
Right. And see, I had to look at that during that time in our marriage, was, why am I choosing to stay and work through this? Because was a non-negotiable for me. I was not going to stay in a relationship with a man who continually cheated, because I did value myself enough during that time to say, that's not okay. Our children, the two that were born at the time, I didn't want that type of behavior being seen or observed for them. So I absolutely would have walked out the door, left, and never looked back if you were unwilling to change.
Right.
And I say that because over the years, other people have heard about our story. We were featured on the 700 Club. Our testimony was. So we would get calls from people. And many times I would get calls from women. And I remember this one particular lady was in a relationship with a gentleman that she was not married to.
Right.
And he was living an extremely promiscuous life and was unwilling to change.
Right.
Which left her susceptible to catch sexually transmitted diseases and all kinds of things that comes along with being in a relationship with someone who chooses not to be faithful or do the work to work through those things within themselves. So, I think she thought I was going to say, oh, you have to just forgive and move on. And I was just like, look, you have to make the decision at the end of the day, what is best for you. However, you're not married. You're not bound to this person. And I don't think it was a smart decision. This was just my personal opinion. Now, you're talking 20 years ago, I had this conversation with this person, but you've got to love yourself enough to make good choices for yourself. And forgiveness does not mean that you don't set boundaries for yourself. You can forgive and move on and not allow something in your space that could potentially harm you, bring you heartache, or anything like that.
So what you're saying is forgiveness may not always restore
the
relationship.
Exactly.
Which is, oftentimes you may think, yeah, forgiveness, and then everything gets better and we're back to, no. Sometimes, like you said, boundaries have to be placed, especially when there's harm involved.
Right.
Physical harm, like you said.
Or mental harm.
Yeah.
I mean, your peace of mind, I protect my peace. And when I see toxic behavior from people that are maybe in my circle and I see you're bringing a lot of chaos into my life, I will cut that off so quick and love you from a distance because I'm not going to allow that type of chaos into my life. I'm just not going to do it.
Exactly.
And I work too hard to have peace every day to allow things into my space that aren't peaceful. And not when I have a choice.
Right.
Sometimes things involuntarily come into your life and you're forced to deal with them. But if you're a repeat offender of my peace, I will cut that off so quickly and be like, look, love you, God bless you, but I'm protecting my mind.
I like that because it goes with the scripture that says, guard your heart. Guard your heart, for out of it flows the well springs of life. It's definitely, we have to be protective of our peace. Protect that area and do not allow these things to enter.
Right.
And that also, sometimes we have to protect ourselves from ourselves sometimes.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Sometimes we can be the hardest judges towards ourselves. I think that's a big point, that we can be hard on it. And back to what I was saying, I was hard on myself when the situation was going on. I was like, which deservedly, yes, what I did was terrible, but I wasn't willing to let it go to where I could get better and progress. I was going to stay in that mindset and become the worst and do it again and again and again. I wasn't going towards healing. So my mindset had to change. Like, that's not me. I'm not that guy.
Right.
I'm not, and it helped me to say, you know what? You're going to be all right. So you can get better.
And that's where I remember in the middle of it, I took on the role of a victim because I was.
Right.
I was a victim in this situation, right?
Absolutely.
And I remember the day I prayed, and God, it was like God told me to be there for you. Not because you deserved it.
Right.
Because you're the one who caused the harm.
Exactly.
But I felt a strength rise up in me that I had never known before. And I began to love me in such a way because you wasn't loving me the way I deserved.
Right.
So I loved me the way I deserved, back to healing.
Right.
And it had to be God give me the strength to be a support to you. But the one thing I was unwilling to do was to compromise with the type of life and lifestyle and home that I was going to choose to live in. Like,
Right.
one of the things was, I remember meeting, it was a family member introduced me to her pastor and the pastor's wife. And as soon as I met the wife, I had this thought. So when we got in the car afterwards, I asked my family member, I said, her husband cheated on her. Didn't. And she's like, how do you know that? I said, I sense it all over her.
Mm-hmm.
She's making everybody around her with her attitude pay for the sins of her husband. And she's not forgiving him and letting it go.
Right.
So she's holding him in contempt for the rest of his life. And her attitude wasn't very pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
It was nasty, to be honest with you. And I could sense it all over her that she had unhealed wounds that were not healed.
Right.
And I never want, I told myself, I am not going to be that woman.
Right.
If I'm going to forgive, I'm going to forgive and let it go.
Mm-hmm.
And not bring it up and hold it over your head the rest of your life. That's too much of a weight for me to carry, to have to try to be FBI agent and watch everything you're doing and checking your phone and all that stuff. Now, I went through a season of like, oh, we're healing now.
Right.
Can I trust him yet? So I would be lying if I said I didn't go through that. But I don't do that now. I don't even care because I know you.
Right.
And not only that, the Holy Ghost is a snitch and he will tell on your behind or mine,
Exactly.
you know, and I wasn't living in the marriage with my eyes shut.
Right.
I was open, but I was open to having the peaceful, loving home that I had always dreamed of, even after the affair.
Right. Right. And you kind of had a vision of where this can go.
Yes.
Of who this can help. That I think that really helped you persevere.
Yeah.
Because you've often shared that I saw us who we can help through this.
Yeah.
And again, I had to do my part.
Yes.
She wasn't just like, I had to,
do the work.
Do the work, put the time in, fast, get with men's groups, find some, counsel. And I really made sure, because I knew what was at stake.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what was at stake. I was going to lose everything. And that wasn't my only motivation. It was also when I began to realize, hey, this is your wife who you made a commitment to. And I love this woman. This is what I have to do in order to get her back. And God was working it all out as we were both working towards that goal of peace and love with one another.
We certainly put in the work, but for somebody listening, you talked about how you identified with being Chad the cheater, right? But I want to encourage people that you are not who you were when you were 9 years old.
Right.
You're not who you were when you were 15 years old. You're not who you were at 30 years old, which was around the time that you were, unfaithful.
Right.
And you're not who you were last year. We are always evolving. Changing and growing. And when you're in a place of, say, something like that, where you were unfaithful or you did this terrible thing, you get to choose if you're going to take on the identity of that individual, or are you going to grow from it and become better?
Yep.
Right? We all made mistakes along the path of life. No matter how big or small, we make mistakes. And when you can choose to stay in that place, you're choosing that identity at that next level, or you're choosing not to grow to another level and to stay stuck in that place. And when somebody is willing to do the work, in my case, it was forgiving and not seeing myself as the victim. And then in your case, it was forgiving yourself.
Yeah.
And not taking on the identity of being a cheater.
Exactly.
That's in the distant past at this point. Neither one of us are those people anymore. And it's a choice that they need to make. You have to make for yourself that I'm no longer going to be the victim. You know,
right.
I'm no longer going to be the rape victim. I'm no longer, I'm not that
That's right.
person
No longer the
anymore.
adulterer. You know, I think the word that's resonating through this whole conversation is mindset.
Mm-hmm.
It's a change of mindset. Forgiveness takes a change of mindset. Because when you take down the judgment of the other individual, then you can kind of say, okay, they broken, they done some stuff. I'm gonna let this one go. And then there's those boundaries you create. If it keeps happening and happening, okay, I forgive you, but I gotta stay away. We need time apart. We gotta mix. If there's harm involved. But mindset, change of mindset, change of your self identity, as well as the way you look towards the other person. You change the way you look at life itself in general, and you have a vision, a mindset that looks forward into the future to say, this is where I'm going. Now you have hope to move forward. Now you have hope, and it's like, okay, this is what's going to happen, and you live there in that moment instead of living in the past of, oh, I'm just this, and, oh, look what he did to me, We have to get healing from it. It's a change of mindset. You can pray all day long, but when you're praying for it, also have your mind line up with what you're praying for.
Right.
Sometimes God do this, God this. God's just like, hey, I've showed you my word. You can cast out imaginations. You can, everything that, exalt yourself against the knowledge of God. So you want to be that person that's actively watching your thoughts.
Right.
And I think that's something that we kind of, are aware of.
Well, and the other thing is, I remember during that time, I had a very close friend that I loved very much, and she had a lot of insecurities and that type of thing, and she was dealing with marital issues as well. And I began to persevere and fight for my peace, for not just myself, but for her. I wanted to model to her how to make it through. And I remember I used to visualize you and I sharing our story of conquering this thing, sharing and becoming a testimony to others of what could be done if you put in the work, trusted God, but did your part in that to work through it so somebody else could see it can be done.
Yes.
It can be done. And I remember I used to envision that all the time, which is why, by the way, we wrote our book, The Imagination Code. It was all of the tips and tools inside of that book was inspired by that very painful situation that we went through in our marriage. And we actually wrote another book before then that we called Infidelity.
Infidelity, straight up.
And but what we realized was we wanted to give people real tools, real steps to get through it. Because the first book was very pray, fast,
Bible, which is perfectly fine.
Right.
But it may not resonate with everyone. And some of you may say, well, it should, because no, you got to communicate. You got to meet people where they're at. And when it comes to science, when it comes to information, everyone can relate to that information. We all went to school. We all had classes. When you come to from an intellectual standpoint, individuals go like, okay, I understand what you're saying.
Right.
And it helps people come over to another level of belief or faith. But also the biggest thing that Jesus also taught was change your mindset. That's a true definition of repentance. Changing our mindset.
As a man thinks, so is he.
So that's
so if you're thinking, and if you're constantly marinating on something that transpired that's been very painful, you'll find that your brain can kind of get stuck in a loop of what happened over and over, and that's being human. That's called being human. But there's true ways of pulling yourself out of that, where you can take responsibility for your mental health and use the tools that we put inside of our book to help people overcome it. And it was the tools we had to live by, because it wasn't just, forgiveness and getting through infidelity. That's part of it.
Right.
But there was other things from our childhood that trickled into your behavior, my behavior.
Absolutely.
So, the book, we encourage you to get the book. Let me, the book, here's our book. It's called In the Imagination Code. I almost said infidelity. The Imagination Code, where we talk about our story inside of the book and what we did, many of the things that we did to help us get past many of the challenges that are in our past. And we're thriving now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Not just in our marriage, but as individuals, you know?
And it's as we're helping others. That's one of the things that helps us thrive is we're helping each other, but we also don't keep it all to ourselves. We help others. We share this with others. And I think that's one thing that will help us as humanity to thrive here on earth with each other is thinking, how can I help someone else?
Yeah.
How can I help someone else?
Mm-hmm.
Doing to others as you would have them doing to you.
Right.
You know, look for someone else in need and give. And it will just expand and it always comes back to you.
Right.
It always comes back as you give. So shall it be given unto you.
Right.
So.
Right. But
really
forgiveness is key. You have to forgive yourself.
Yep.
You have to forgive the other person.
Yep. And I was gonna say, I just had a little spill on words with giving, but within the word forgive, it's a giving. It's an act of giving.
That's good.
To give grace, to give, to give to another person, and sometimes we forget to give that to ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
Give yourself a break, and say, you know what? That's not who I am. Re-identify, recalculate, recalibrate, and say, you know what? Let me get back to who I really am.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the things she remembered was who I really am.
Yeah.
And that's what helped us get through it, was knowing exactly who we truly are.
Yeah.
And that's what we have to remove the blinders and all the lies and all the masks that get placed on our life just due to mistakes or decisions we've made, both towards ourselves or others.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.